This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Spanish Town Road Exam Depot closed the following shooting. A man was shot on the compound of the Spanish Town Road Examination Depot in St. Andrew yesterday. It is reported that explosions were heard at a section of the compound. Persons at the scene took cover. A man was subsequently seen suffering from gunshot wounds. He was later assisted to the hospital. The depot was closed following the incident. Cabinet returns to face-to-face meetings. The Cabinet met face-to-face yesterday for the first time in 10 months, following a switch to virtual meetings in December amid the COVID-19 pandemic. In his opening address, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said vaccination played an important part in the return to an in-person meeting. Today, we have taken the decision to return our cabinet to face-to-face, not just for the effectiveness of our decision-making, but as a symbol to the rest of the country that yes, we are still in a pandemic. However, we must transition to living with COVID-19, Holness said. He said all ministers were required to indicate if they have been vaccinated before gaining access to the meeting room. Holness said that the government has to lead the country towards normalcy. The way to do it is for every Jamaican to take the option of getting vaccinated. The way to do it is for every Jamaican to comply with the infection, prevention and control measures that have been established, which will eventually be relaxed the higher the level of vaccination. And for those who choose not to take the option, the requirement would still be in place for testing, Holness said. The Prime Minister sought to explain that testing would be necessary for gatherings in an effort to build a guarantee that the potential of COVID-19 spread is low. Holness explained that the online meetings had challenges with the reliability of the internet and much was lost in communication. If we are having this challenge meeting online in the cabinet, can you imagine the challenge our children are having trying to learn online? We must return our children to school, and again, the way to do it is to have your children and our teachers vaccinated, Holness remarked. Leah Tavares-Finson says she will miss her pawpaw. Leah Tavares-Finson, the outspoken daughter of noted attorney-at-law and the president of the Senate, Tom Tavares-Finson, and the mother of Christopher Dogpaw, Linton's child, has expressed that she will miss Linton following his death earlier yesterday. Tavares-Finson and Dogpaw share a 10-year-old son. In a post to her Instagram stories, Tavares-Finson referred to the deceased as Pawpaw Bear. "I will miss you, Pawpaw Bear, my dark paw," she wrote. She added, "Watch over us the right way now." In another story post, Tavares-Finson shared a photo of Dogpaw with their son and her other child. Recent deadly incidents involving mentally ill people linked to COVID crisis, said Professor Abel. Professor Wendell Abel, head of the Department of Community Health and Psychiatry at the University of the West Indies, Mona, has linked recent deadly incidents involving mentally ill people to the mental health crisis Jamaica is facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The latest incident occurred on Saturday in St. Anne when a man was beheaded and his attacker, who was of unsound mind, was later killed by the police. He also reiterated the need for improvement in the training of the police to interact with the mentally ill.
We're seeing increased number of persons who are actually decompensating within the community, but it's also impacting on the general health services because so much of our resources have to be redirected towards the pandemic. And in some areas we find that because of the need for isolation of persons and the COVID protocol, there may be a reduction in the number of mental health beds. And therefore, some of this is really, in a sense, unfortunately unavoidable. But at the same time, we recognize that there's still a lot of limitations and there are areas that we need to strengthen, especially your crisis services and your community care. I think these are two areas that we certainly need to see more resources directed to. And you know, in the long run, the only way we're going to achieve that, one way to achieve that is to redirect resources from the mental hospital. We have a mental hospital with just about 600 persons with a horrendous budget.
Joy Crooks, a nurse administrator at the Committee for the Upliftment of the Mentally Ill, said it appears that the killing of the mentally ill has become a strategy of the police to deal with the cases.
I've had relatives who call me for help, and I tell them to call the police and the mental health officer. They said they're not calling the police because the police tell them, say, if they come, you may not like what the action they have to take. You understand me? When you take out somebody, that's a total solution. So it would appear that is the path that we are now venturing down.
Alleged gangster walks despite the cops' testimony. An alleged member of the Easy Scream gang, who was last year arrested and charged for reportedly firing at a policeman, was found not guilty of gun and assault charges in the gun court on Friday. Ian Somerville, 28, otherwise called Bujo of Wellington Street in Kingston, was found not guilty of illegal possession of firearm and assault at common law in a judge-alone trial before Justice Linton Pusey. Somerville was arrested last September following an alleged shooting incident in which he was wounded on Darling Street in Kingston. According to the statement of the police constable, he and a police sergeant was driving along Darling Street about 11:30 a.m. on September 25 when, on reaching the vicinity of the Lizard Town car park, he saw Somerville and notified his superior before exiting the vehicle. The constable said Somerville was about 4 feet away from him when he shouted out his name and instructed him not to move. However, Somerville allegedly pulled a firearm from his waistband, fired and ran into the market. The officer said he chased the alleged gangster, who on reaching the market entrance again pulled his firearm. The cop fired at Somerville. During the chase, the police said he saw Somerville throw away a gun and continued running until he exited the market and ran towards Tivoli Gardens. The policeman said he was assisted by the sergeant in dragging Somerville from beneath a van. The cop claimed to have noticed Somerville bleeding and they took him to the Kingston Public Hospital for treatment. However, the cops said he and others then returned to the market to retrieve the gun, but were unable to do so because of a large hostile crowd which had gathered. Attorney at law Shamar Hanson, who, along with Franklin Grenion, represented Somerville, said that his client had always maintained that he had no weapon. According to Hanson, the judge, in arriving at a verdict, found his client to be more credible. The judge didn't believe their story. Basically, he found my client's evidence more credible than the officer's evidence, said the lawyer. Somerville, however, remains in custody in relation to the alleged murder of Jerome Harris in Denham Town, where the Easy Scream gang is said to be based. Cops brace for a flare-up after dog paw slain. The Augustown police are on high alert following the shooting death of feared gangster Christopher Dogpaw Linton on Monday, suggesting that it is likely his cronies will turn a blind eye. Sub-officer in charge Inspector Stephen Taylor told the news that the security forces were bracing for a flare-up of violence as gang members once led by Linton may seek blood. Linton was head of the Dogpaw gang, which police said launched a reign of terror in Bedward Gardens, Augustown, and the tavern for years. There are a lot of persons aligned to him, and losing a leader means that people will strike back to show that they are not pleased with what happened, said Taylor. Linton, who was released in April after his shooting and firearm convictions were thrown out by the Court of Appeal, was cut down during an alleged confrontation with the police in the relatively quiet community of Elletson Flat, meters away from the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Linton was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in 2013 on the 2 charges. However, they were to run concurrently. Taylor told the news that the consensus among scores of residents is that Linton needed to go. On Monday, Deputy Commissioner of Police Fitz Bailey, who heads the Jamaica Constabulary Force's crime and the security portfolio, said he had been implicated in several murders and shootings since his release from prison in April. Sources with knowledge of Linton's operation in and around the Bedward Gardens confirmed police reports that he had stirred up trouble upon his return to the community and was seeking to reassert his power in other neighborhoods. People glad him gone, man. Him come back and try to take over the people them community and influence the little boy them. One resident who asked not to be identified because of security concerns said. According to the resident, Linton also sought to eliminate perceived competition for area leader, reportedly ordering hits on rivals. A neighboring resident who also did not want to be named said, however, that some of those largely affected by Linton's criminal activities are still uncertain about the consequences of his killing. We are not aware of all the information yet. When the dust settles, we hear what is what and more information surfaces, then we can speak more clearly to the possibilities of retaliation and reprisals, said the source. But speaking of the bat, Linton's death should be a good thing in relation to reducing the violence, providing that everything else remains equal, the resident added. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.